just like physical illness, mental illness can be overcome. We just got to inspire people to believe that.
The mental health community and the firearms industry spend way too much time running parallel to each other without communicating. It's time we change the narrative and destroy the stigma that we both face.
Walk the Talk America presents Guns and Mental Health, a podcast for firearms owners, clinicians, and the curious public.
Welcome to another episode of the Guns and Mental Health podcast. Mike's somewhere on a beach right now, taking a much needed vacation, and Jake's on assignment doing another media obligation. So we took this opportunity to do another interview with me and interview our last team member of the kind of clinical podcast team, Brandon. Brandon, I'll turn it over to you to give whatever kind of introduction you want.
Sure. No, my name is Brandon Covey, licensed professional counselor in the state of Ohio. I've been practicing for about 2 years now. Mainly my specialties are with treating depression and anxiety, obviously helping people, get through really difficult life circumstances, finding, meaning and purpose through those. And then, over the years, I got really into trauma. So one of my other specialties right now is working with trauma. I did a presentation on EMDR on this podcast not too long ago. That's something that I got certified in, and I'm actually being certified to train it now. So I'll be the trainer for the agency that I work in. So that's pretty much it. That's me, and that's what I do for work. And then outside of that, I'm a musician. I'm a bass player. I've been doing that for 20 years now, a little over 20 years now. So kind of my side job is I do some freelance music. And, from that, I just do, like churches, musicals, weddings, play in a couple bands, just kind of do things like that. And then obviously avid shooter, love shooting, been into firearms for a few years now. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Took a long time to address the chat and say good morning. So Guns and Mental Health podcast, which interest came first? Was it the mental health and exploring that profession, or was firearms first?
Mental health was first. So I, kind of have a pretty in-depth background with mental health. I've always struggled with anxiety. It started very young. I want to say I was probably in the probably 8 or 9 or so when I really started to have anxiety. It started off with kind of separation anxiety. I was afraid to be alone, afraid to be away from my parents. I'd be at school and just kind of get really panicky and wouldn't really know why. So from there I started to see some different counselors and specialists, and as I aged, it progressed in a lot of different ways. It started off with separation anxiety, and then it turned into more, just anxiety being around people and more social anxiety. So essentially because I had seen so many counselors, this is the short version, because I had seen so many counselors, when it came time to go to college, I was wondering, should I had two main passions, mental health and music. And I was trying to figure out which one of these do I want to pursue. Both of them are pretty difficult to pursue professionally. For music, if you really want to do anything in music, you have to go the music education route. And with that, it's a lot of teaching concert band and marching band and stuff like that, which I really wasn't into. To do the stuff that I really wanted to do, I would have had to go on get a PhD in music. And then with mental health, I was thinking about going into psychology, and though I'm not a psychologist, things change a little bit. You have to get a PhD for that as well. So I was kind of thinking, which one of these do I really want to pursue? Because both of them is going to take a lot of time. And I ended up going with music. So I did music for a while, or went to school for music, and then pretty much I graduated. I saw how competitive the field was. I thought it would be kind of a waste of money to pursue a master's and PhD. And I thought I could, take a year off to just kind of reassess what's going on. The good thing is that, just because you have a bachelor's degree in a different field, usually you can jump straight into a master's of a different field. So I knew I had that going for me. So I just figured I'd take a year off. That year turned into 11 years. I was working at a sales marketing job. And they were really great to me. I learned a lot. I had several promotions, and things were going really well there. But it just I kind of felt like I wasn't doing what I was called to do. I felt like I kind of failed the music route, and then I just kind of every day I went to work, and I was getting all these accolades. People were telling me, you're doing such a good job. I was getting these promotions, but I wasn't helping anyone. Like, no one was really getting touched by what I was doing. The world wasn't a better place with me doing what I was doing. And that's just something that's really passionate for me. I really want to be an asset. I really want to help. So I decided to go back to school for mental health. So I did my master's degree was in counseling and human development. I went to Walsh University, and I was originally going to go the school counseling route, to be a school counselor, because when you go for the program that I was in, the degree was counseling and human development, and you could go into clinical mental health, school counseling, or student affairs. So I talked to a few school counselors that I know personally, and they were telling me that, it's, you do get to do some counseling, but a lot of it's like, admin stuff, doing like, kind of planning for college, a lot of like, babysitting detentions and stuff like that. So I was kind of thinking like, okay, I want to do counseling full time. So I switched into the clinical counseling route. And like I said, I graduated like a few years ago. So I've been doing it now for about 2-3 years.
Nice. Maybe this is a good spot to kind of demystify all the acronyms, and maybe from your point of view going through kind of college, are you aiming for LPC? Go through kind of the different options and maybe your experience through that.
Yeah, definitely. LPC is what I am right now. So essentially so it's so confusing because I know we were talking a little bit about this before we started. There are so many different routes you could go, so many acronyms, and then it gets more confusing when you throw like the different states in the mix, because like you have different acronyms for different states. But I can speak for Ohio. What I do is I'm an LPC, which is a licensed professional counselor. So essentially, in order to get that, you need to go to grad school by a CACREP accredited university, which Walsh was. And then you need to take a state licensure test. After that, you're awarded your LPC. And then after you get your LPC, my next step is that I had to work for 2 years, which I just hit those 2 years. I got all my hours. You need, for me, it's 150, but you need X amount of supervision hours, which I also have. Once you get those, you take your test for your independent licensure, which for me, I would be an LPCC. So LPC is licensed professional counselor. LPCC is licensed professional clinical counselor. And then the next step for me after I get my LPCC, after I take my test, which I'm still kind of fighting with the board on scheduling, which is I'll rant for another day. But after that, I'll get my S, which is a supervisor title, which you just have to wait for a year. So that's the route that I'm taking. Some other routes, just briefly, social workers. That's LSW, which is a licensed social worker. For an independent, it's LISW, which is licensed independent social worker. And then you've got MFT, which are marriage and family therapists. So, and they're all, they all pretty much are essentially the same thing. You have different, like there's different things you can do for each ones, but like in the nutshell, you're still doing counseling. You're working individually with people. You're working with families. You're working with couples. So a lot of it's the same thing.
The mental health field almost needs to steal one from like karate, of like a black belt. Okay, they're a master top level. You talk about, all right, I'll take that test, and then I'm going to add another letter that I would have no idea what it means. It's very confusing, but thank you for walking us through that. But if you guys go to the belt system, feel free to steal that idea and make it easier on us, so we could maybe understand a little bit better from the outside world.
Definitely.
Let's talk about firearms. Where did those enter your kind of life?
Yeah, so that was that's an interesting one. So I never really had a strong stance on firearms. So that's obviously changed now, but just kind of I was very, I guess I would say, gun neutral, or not gun neutral. I'd say gun ignorant is what I'll be honest. I'll say I was pretty gun ignorant. I kind of joked on the first podcast that I did on here, a little over a year ago, I used to think that a Glock was a slang term for a gun. I mean, this is how ignorant I was, several years back. But essentially what happened was, it was, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, I want to say now. I can't remember exactly when it was, but I lived in kind of a rough neighborhood. And when I was going to grad school, I was working full time at that sales marketing job I was telling you about. I was going to grad school. I was doing practicum, which is essentially, pretty much doing counseling just under supervision from school professors. So, I mean, I was essentially like quite literally working 60, 70-hour work weeks, like all things considered with homework and all that stuff. So I was gone a lot. And what very obviously happened is my house was scouted out. It happened pretty much because I used to come home from work, get change of clothes, go to school. I'd be at school for a couple hours, then I would come back. Literally, it was a 2-hour window. It was right when time change happened. So it got dark at like 4 or 5 o'clock. And I came home from school that night and I saw that my front door had been kicked in. TV was gone. You could tell like my drawers and my dresser drawers had been ransacked. Animals were under the bed, scared shitless. So it was just like a really, really, kind of, I would say it was a pretty traumatic thing for me. After that happened, I was, having nightmares of like things happening. I'm very fortunate that I was not home when it happened because, like I said, this time I was very gun ignorant. I didn't have any firearms in the home. That probably the closest thing I had was a knife in the kitchen drawer. But, I was having these just really crazy nightmares. Who's now my wife, she wasn't living with me at the time, but I'm thinking like, what if she was there alone? What if it was in the middle of the night and we were both in bed together and, somebody came in. I was having all these crazy nightmares of all these crazy scenarios. I became very hypervigilant. Every time the doorbell rang, I would jump, 10 feet in the air, just very hypervigilant. And just constantly thought about it. Even during the day, I was just constantly playing through these scenarios. And pretty much what it came down to, I was just like, I need something to protect myself. So my wife, my now wife, did an awesome thing. She got me a gift card to Fin Feather Fur, which is a gun shop or a kind of outdoor shop around this area in Ohio. So I went there and I got my first firearm. I knew really nothing about firearms. Like I said, I just was kind of at the mercy of the salesman at the counter. So he talked me into a Walther CCP M2. That was my first firearm. So then I took it home. I felt very, like happy about, the fact that I had something to protect myself now, but I was so afraid of this thing. Kevin. So like I would have it, sitting down like I would have it on my nightstand. Then I would have it in the case. Sometimes I would have the magazine loaded in the gun. Sometimes there'd be chambered. Sometimes it wouldn't be. I was just like so afraid of this thing. So I called one of my buddies, Dan, and which he's a fellow musician. He's a drummer that I work with all the time. And I know that he, was into firearms. And I was just like, hey, I want to go shooting until I'm not afraid of this thing anymore. So took me shooting to an outdoor range that he's a member at. And we started, just kind of, firing off some rounds. He brought his arsenal with him. So, I got to shoot mine. I got to shoot, his 1911 and, some different calibers. And I just fell in love. It was like, he like, when we were done shooting, he's like, all right, you ready to go? And I'm just kind of in my head, I'm thinking like, no, I'm not. But, I was with him. So we left. And then the next morning, it was literally like, I woke up and I was like so happy, so pumped. And I'm like, why am I so happy? And it was because I wanted to go shooting again. So it pretty much kind of unlocked this passion that I had no idea that I had. So, fast forward, to now, I have a giant gun safe next to me that's almost as tall as me. I've got, fingerprint safes, kind of stored around the house. I've got, firearm in pretty much every room. And I'm one of those guys now. So went from being gun ignorant to very into firearms.
Among Walk the Talk America's partners, Arms Corps may have the most colorful history of them all. But then again, that likely happens when you have a company that's lasted for more than a century. Started in 1905 in the Philippines and expanding operations to right here to Nevada in 1985, Armscore offers some of the finest firearms you'll find on the market, from shotguns to 1911s, and from ammunition to a competitive shooting team. Armscore offers a lot. But there's something more. Armscore is the first manufacturer to print the free and anonymous mental health screenings link offered through Walk the Talk America's website right there on their packaging. If you buy an Armscore product, you will not only see our flyer inside, but you may actually see the screenings link printed on the side of the box. Go to armscor.com, that's armscore.com, to find out more about their heritage, their products, and their competitive shooting team. We're proud and thankful to have Armscore as a partner.
I know it seems to be a slippery slope. You try to start slow, and then you're just diving full on in. Where did Walk the Talk America come in, or maybe was that traumatic event the kind of initiative that wanted you to be able to treat trauma better as a professional? Which maybe that?
Yeah, I'd say I'd say the trauma thing came a little bit later. We can get into that. I think, where Walk the Talk came in. So when I was really getting into firearms, it became, kind of like an obsession. I was watching, a bunch of different, YouTube videos. I was watching how to stage for a home defense situation. I was watching a lot of videos like that. I was watching a lot of how do you take different guns apart? How do you clean them? How do they work? Ammunition, the difference between hollow points and, full metal jackets. So just the real basic stuff. I was really just digesting and just trying to get as much information and be as knowledgeable as I possibly could. While I was doing that, I stumbled across Covey Noir, who's, as you know, one of our board members. So I got really into, watching his videos. I really liked the, his approach and the way he, shared different messages. And it really was kind of what opened me up to it was I finally have something that's keeping me safe. And then, again, you have all these, gun regulations and, politicians that are trying to take them away from you. And that really kind of got me into that whole side of things. So I watched a lot of Covey Noir videos about 2A advocacy. And I was wondering to myself, one day on my way to work, I was like, I wonder if he has a podcast. So I pulled up my Spotify, typed Covey Noir, and the first thing that comes up was Covey Noir Guns and Mental Health Podcast. And I was like, guns, mental health, this seems right up Covey Noir. This seems right up my alley. So I listened to that podcast on the way to work. And as it was going, as the podcast, was going, I was listening to Mike and Jake, and I was just like, okay, Jake, this guy, Jake, he's a therapist. This guy, Mike, sounds like a really cool guy, really into firearms, really interested in the mental health side of things. And I was just like, I need to learn more about this organization. So I got to work. I was very fortunate. My 8 a.m. that morning canceled. So I hopped on my computer and I went to the WTTA website. And I think I literally, in that hour break I had at work, I read the entire website and was just blown away. I was like, I can't believe this is a thing. This is the coolest thing ever. And then I started, I went to the YouTube channel. I was watching all the different YouTube tutorials. I saw, the intersection of guns and mental health, the introductory course. There we go. The introductory course, the intermediate course. So throughout the weeks I was watching all of those, and I just kind of became obsessed with the organization. I thought it was so cool. So I emailed them, who was Mike, and he emailed me back really quickly. And essentially I just said hey, this is amazing. I love what you guys are doing. I remember asking them do you have a store? I would love to buy some merch and support your guys' stuff and spread the word. And so I ended up, at the time there wasn't a store. So I donated $50, got a t-shirt, started to rep that, was repping the wristband, had the stickers. So later on then I took the, I took the intermediate course, and I was having some trouble getting credit for it through the board. So I emailed Jake because he's obviously very open with his email and how to get in contact with him. So I emailed him and just said hey, and I asked him, I can't remember how it was, but I just asked him a quick question about hey, I'm having trouble getting credit for this. Is this a certified course? All this stuff. And he answered me, kind of went on a really short rant about counseling boards, which I thought was very funny. And then he said, gun owning therapists are really hard to come by right now. Do you want to be a guest on the podcast? And I was like, oh my gosh. And I had been listening to the podcast since I heard Covey Noir. So that was a huge honor for me. So him and Mike had me on the podcast and interviewed me a while back. It was, like I said, it was about a year and a half or so ago. So that's just kind of how like we got, introduced, and I really connected with Jake in a few ways on that podcast. We talked a little bit about reality therapy, which is a therapeutic intervention or a therapeutic approach that a lot of people don't really practice, but me and Jake were really into it. So that was kind of a funny thing that we bonded over. And from there, it was just kind of like, I told them, hey, I really want to be a part of this. Like any way I can help, I'd be happy to, take the flyers to the gun shops, blast the stickers around. So from there, Mike sent me a packet of the box or the cards that we put in the gun boxes at stores, and a pack of stickers. So I took those to the local gun shops in the area and we're putting those on the counter, just kind of trying to spread the word. And I was doing that for a while. Like I said, I was listening to podcasts. I was a really big fan. And then finally, I just reached out to Jake and I was just like, hey, man, like, I can do this all day. I'm more than happy to, be kind of like, a street team guy, but I'd love to be like a part of this and actually like, take a bigger role. So if there's any, any openings that you have on the board, I'd love to be considered. And then he just responded right away and said, we'd love to have you on the advisory board. And that was pretty much it. So ever since then, I'm very proud to say I'm, part of the team.
How do you handle going to gun ranges or gun shops with the flyers? I know Mike and I talk a lot. He gets a lot of questions from maybe mental health organizations that want to share resources and don't know how to approach them, or maybe say some things that might bring some guards up of store owners. So how do you approach it and how do you find success having that conversation and kind of offering those resources?
Yeah. So I think what helps is the ranges that I originally started to go to drop the flyers off. And they're not all ranges, some are just gun shops, but there's 4 in particular that I was thinking of, but they all kind of know me because I go shooting pretty frequently. So, I'm on a first name basis with a lot of those people that work in the shops. So, pretty much like I was just able to go in and I already had the rapport. So pretty much I just went in just like, hey, do you got a few minutes where I could talk to you about, this organization that I'm a part of? And, just kind of say, I don't really have like a set script that I say, but essentially just, there's 2 main goals that we have, where obviously the big one is we're trying to, close the gap between firearms and mental health. One, we're trying to educate clinicians on, on gun culture and making it normal and, why people own guns and why they're important. And then we try to destigmatize the counseling profession to gun owners. For example, like if there's a gun owner that has a whole bunch of guns, they might be afraid to go in and tell a counselor like, hey, I'm struggling with some suicidal thoughts right now. So we're trying to destigmatize, that process and let them know that there are gun-friendly counselors out there. And then just kind of say like, these are some flyers that we have. Do you mind if I just, put them here on the counter for you? And then here's some stickers. And then usually they're cool with that. They just kind of let them sit there, and then after a while, they usually disappear, which is a good thing. I talked to a couple of them, and they said it's kind of funny because like people like they'll kind of like walk into the counter and then they'll kind of like look at it and kind of like walk away a little bit, and then kind of come back and just like grab a flyer, stick it in their pockets. So there's still like that secret stigma to it, but it seems to be responded pretty well or received pretty well.
Great. Yeah, I think everybody, obviously has concerns and hears the horror stories, so it's making progress, but obviously not there. Did you have a similar experience to Jake, to where you came out of the closet, in his own words, as a gun-owning mental health professional, or did you have kind of a different experience?
Yeah, I never really say. I was always pretty open about it. Like in school, in grad school, a lot they would ask you, like, what are some things, like, like you have like the icebreakers, and like say your name, what got you into counseling, and one interesting fact about yourself. And sometimes like my interesting fact would be that I'm a musician. Sometimes it would be that I'm really into firearms and I'm an avid shooter. I never really got any backlash from it personally. But I have learned that, there are a lot of people that have, such as Jake and a lot of other people. So I guess to answer your question, I never felt like I needed to come out. I've always just kind of been out of the closet in that regard. But I fortunately didn't have like a lot of like the negative experiences that a lot of other people did. I will say that.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I will say that. as I post like different things, as I share different things about Walk the Talk America, and like for example, I was sharing the survey that we had a while back. I share the introductory and the intermediate course every once in a while. I shared the interview that I did initially, some of the interviews that we've done, the clinician interviews. And I will say I get a lot of, there's never comments on the actual posts that are public. It's always a direct message. But there's a lot of people that I went to grad school with, and a lot of people in the profession that'll reach out to me like, hey, this is really cool. I learned a lot from this. Appreciate what you're doing. So you can definitely tell that people are afraid to come out with it.
We want to take a moment to recognize one of our sponsors, Chattanooga Shooting Supplies, Inc. CSSI was founded in 1977 by two families that had a passion for hunting and the outdoors. That same passion holds true today for the second generation of family members and their 200-plus employees. Own a gun store or range? If so, you understand the importance of two-step distribution to help you meet the demand of your customers. Their mission is to exceed their customers' expectations with a strong service focus from a knowledgeable sales staff, an assortment of trusted and well-known brands, competitive pricing, and timely shipping. With over 50,000 SKUs of shooting and hunting-related products, they are in the business to help customers succeed. Learn more at ChattanoogaShooting.com.
Absolutely. It's almost like the gun flyer or the flyer on the gun shop counter. Everybody's, oh, this is cool, but I don't want to publicly be attached saying those things. I feel kind of the same way with marketing of a lot of people have very negative reactions because all they see in the media is negative things about the gun community. So I'm not as vocal with on those platforms about maybe my involvement. But every once in a while I will, and I'll get a few DMs. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't think of it that way. Thanks for bringing it to my attention, or stuff like that. But it's interesting how outside of maybe the gun 2A community, it's still very taboo and unknown. Let's dive into your interest in trauma. You said it didn't begin after the break-in. Where did that kind of start?
It kind of started, it was kind of a surprise. So with EMDR training, that's, I won't get too into that because we did a whole episode on that a while back, but it's a very intense trauma treatment that is very well renowned and has a lot of, research, proving how effective it is. Typically, it's very expensive to get trained in that. There's a class that you have to take, which can be, several $1,000s. And then after that, you have to be supervised for a certain amount of hours. Again, it all depends on the state that you're in. But obviously, you have to pay, $150 to $200 for each of those supervision hours. So, to get trained in something like that, it's a really big investment. And it's something that, we were they brushed over it in school, just like, oh yeah, this is an option, but never really got into it. So something that I always thought was very interesting. But at our agency that I work at, the director of the Canton location, she is certified to train EMDR, and she pretty much taught the employees for free. So we got that initial class without having to pay anything. She's also a supervisor, so she was able to supervise us. So she held monthly group supervisions. Those were also free. So pretty much I got the class and the supervision, or the training class and the supervision, all for free. So that saved me several $1,000s. The only thing I had to pay was like $200 for my last hour of supervision to the person that actually certifies us. And that's pretty much, it was just kind of like, me going over some of my cases with her and, answering, essentially making sure that I'm competent and what I'm doing. So from there, I got certified in that whole process for $200, which is a huge win. So from there, after learning about EMDR and learning about the different things that you can actually do with it, I started to think to myself, okay, there's a lot of clients I have right now that we're kind of stuck. We've done a lot of processing. We've done a lot of talking. I've done just about all the validation I can do at this point. We did all the coping skills, we got the symptoms, but they're still just not where they need to be. And I was thinking okay, EMDR would be a really good fit for this person. So, I started to practice EMDR introduced EMDR to some different clients. And it was just so crazy to me how much it helped so many people. I'm not saying that everybody that comes in is a miracle case, or that it's anything that I'm doing specifically, but it's just so crazy, like seeing people that I've worked with for, a year that have just been so down and so wrapped up in their trauma. And then just after just a few weeks, just like, you can just see it in their eyes. You can see color in their face, they're, active. They're, they're not just sitting at home anymore. They're actually out doing things. They're not afraid to do things that they used to be afraid to do anymore. It was just so cool to see that. And I kind of got addicted to that aspect of it. And then I read a book called The Body Keeps the Score by Vester van der Kolk. It's a really, really well-known book on trauma. And just thought that it was very interesting how, like, what trauma can do to the body. And I thought it was, and there were some parallels, it wasn't, my specific situation that got me into wanting to learn trauma, but kind of like after the fact, I was able to go back and think to myself, like, okay, I was suffering from acute trauma, from this break-in. And, I was looking at all these, like, normal symptoms of trauma, such as, like, the nightmares, the flashbacks, hypervigilance, avoidance, difficulty experiencing positive feelings, the high anxiety, I was looking at all these things and just kind of thinking like, okay, like I had a pretty normal, like I thought I was overreacting. I thought I became paranoid, but I had a very normal response to, what happened. So, it kind of got me really into just changing kind of the way I dealt with trauma. So, when people would come in with different traumatic instances, I would just tell them, like, all these things that you have going on right now, especially, like if people have like dissociation, which is kind of like an out of body feeling that they have, just being able to tell them like, no, you're not, I know you feel crazy, but you're not crazy. You're going through really normal things that stem from an abnormal thing that happened to you. And it just kind of turned into, kind of addiction for me just to kind of help people through stuff like that.
Did you ever get it for yourself? I know we talked about in the episode of you can kind of treat yourself with it, or did you have somebody else that was certified in it do it to you to experience it, or how did that work?
I did. I went through it one time. Essentially, it was, I won't go into like, like the reason. It wasn't, like too terribly traumatic, but well, I'm going to just say it. It was essentially a dog that I had for several years. I had found him when he was a puppy. There was a lot of things that happened. And I was, I think I was in undergrad when this happened. So I was still living at home with my mom. Some things happened situationally. She ended up losing the house. We had to kind of, move, and, I moved out into an apartment, she moved out, but because of just like the situation, we weren't able to take our animals with us. So, that losing that dog, having to rehome him, and he had a great home, lived a great life. Everything was great. But, just that, moment was really triggering for me. And, I was talking to my therapist about it. I can't remember what happened at the time. My therapist at the time, I can't remember what we were talking about, but we were talking about something completely different. And then somehow that dog came up and I got a little bit emotional, and she was just kind of like, okay, like this is clearly still bothering you quite a bit. So I went through EMDR through that process, and I thought it would be cool just to, be able to go through it that way. I can say that it's something that I've experienced myself. And I'd say it definitely did help. When I look back, the whole point of EMDR is to, look back on a target memory and have it not bother you as much, that's the desensitization. So, am I able to look back on that whole experience and like, be, happy about it and think like, this is totally okay? Absolutely not. But, I could actually look back on it now and not get emotional and not have it really impact me. So I can attest personally that I've been through it and speak to the power that it holds for sure.
That makes sense. And it was interesting in your break-in experience of your experience. Once you got your firearm, you kind of felt better and almost maybe felt a more natural, oh, okay, that's over and done with. But that experience never fully goes away too. Of you felt better, you felt more secure with a firearm, especially after you weren't afraid of it and got on the range with it. But that underlying trauma just doesn't magically float away. It's still there.
Absolutely.
Do you ever maybe suggest firearms for people that are suffering from anxiety in appropriate kind of situations that they've experienced, or does that never really kind of get there with the client relationship?
I would not say that I recommend it if it doesn't come up. It's one of those things. I'm very easy to talk to. I'm a very easy clinician to talk to about firearms. I've got a lot of WTTA. I've got a couple polos and, like the quarter zip, this hoodie, this t-shirt. I've also got, a little plastic bowl of stickers and wristbands right on the little stand next to the couch that people sit on. And then I've also got a sticker that says the liberal gun owner sticker on my cabinet that sits behind me. So pretty much you walk into my office and within 5 minutes, you'll be like, okay, this guy's into guns to some capacity. So people that do own guns are usually pretty comfortable talking about it. So I'll recommend them to go shooting, if they're already a gun owner. But as far as if it never comes up, it's not something that I bring up because, I don't know if there's how they are with firearms. I don't know if there's a traumatic thing that they may have been through with firearms. Maybe they had, a family member that, killed themselves with a firearm and they hold a stigma against that. So I'm reluctant to just recommend it as a coping skill, but I do slide it in there every once in a while. So, when I talk about coping skills and mindfulness, I'll say something like, it's different for everyone. For some people, it could be music. For some people, it could be journaling. For some people, it could be watching the show. For some people, it could be going to the range and firing off some rounds. So that's kind of my little plug that I'll throw in there. But yeah, that's as far as just recommending it out of the blue. I don't think that's something I've ever done. I would like to, though.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's not when appropriate, and you have all of the cues to open that conversation if they're curious and interested in it.
Right.
How has your maybe life changed the most since being more involved with Walk the Talk America?
I would say the biggest thing is being able to advocate for something that I believe in, or that I'm passionate about. So, I've always been passionate about mental health. I've become over the years very passionate about firearms. So being able to, walk in both worlds and, really have a passion and be a part of an organization that allows us to kind of live in both worlds and advocate. I think that's probably the biggest way that my life has changed. For example, I'm off on Friday mornings. I work 410s Monday through Thursday. So, I really look forward to, this podcast every Friday morning. It's, one of the highlights of my week. And then, I got to go to, Mike very graciously, had all of us come to SHOT Show this year. That's an experience that so many gun owners want to go and just don't get the opportunity to go. So I'm very lucky and very grateful to have had that opportunity to go and check that out. But I'd say just kind of a short answer to your question, just, being able to advocate for something that I believe in, and that's something that I would like to do more, as I progress into my career and as I am, able to work independently. And, maybe if I have my own practice someday, or if I'm, head of an agency and I don't have as much client facing hours, I would love to spend more time advocating for WTTA as well.
How was SHOT Show for those that haven't been? I know I was supposed to go 2 years ago and had to cancel right at the airport with iritis, which is apparently the inflammation of the iris, which kind of knocked me out for that trip, unfortunately. But for those that haven't made it, what was your experience like?
It was big. It was very, very big. Jake had warned us all, wear good walking shoes, don't trust Google Maps. Vegas is a huge city. You're going to be doing so much walking. And, even though I did take all of his advice and I prepped and I brought good walking shoes, I was not prepared for all of the walking. But no, it was really cool. We got to meet a lot of really cool people. I got to meet Ghost Tack, who I know is very involved in our chat here a lot and does his own podcast. That's really cool. Clover Tack. And then they had us on guests on their podcast at SHOT Show, which I thought was really cool. And that was kind of another cool thing. It's, me just, being gun ignorant for so long. And then to be able to be a guest on a podcast with Ghost Tech and Clover Tech was like, holy shit, this is crazy. But yeah, and then just getting to see all of the manufacturers, I walked around with Eddie quite a bit. Eddie was really cool. So because I'm more, involved in the mental health side of things, I'm not really, too involved in the firearm side of things as far as like, competition shooting or working in the field professionally and things like that. Eddie was really cool and, took me around, introduced me to a lot of, like his sponsors and a lot of, different people in the industry. Mike and Jake introduced me to a lot of people. So yeah, I got to meet a lot of really, really cool people and just see a lot of really cool things and just saw how massive it was. I hope I get to go back at some point. It was just to kind of like, having gone there now and having like, learned from a lot of different experiences, there's a lot of things I'd probably do differently next time and different things I'd want to see. So definitely want to go back. But yeah, it was a huge experience. I'm very grateful. Even if I never get to go back, I'll be very grateful for that one time I got to go.
Eddie put DB on the spot the last time we did this with a good question. So I'm gonna put you on the spot too. Who is the best shooting? We'll say not black powder. We all know Eddie's gonna probably take the gold on that one. But all the mental health professionals involved in WTTA, who would you rank as the best and list in the order to the least worst shooter?
Just kidding. Oh man, put me on the spot. I would say, let's see. So I would say, so Eddie is a competition shooter and he's going to be representing Team America in Italy. So I'm thinking he'd be number one. I know that I do a lot of shooting. I go to the range a lot. I've taken a few training classes like defensive handgun handling and things like that. But I know the DB does a lot more of that. Like I know he does a lot of training. I know he also, served in he was in the service for a little bit. So I'm sure he's got a lot of training there. So I'm going to put him second. I don't know how much Jake shoots. So I know that he's, kind of like me. I know he's into firearms. I know he goes to like, Reno Guns and Ranges a lot. So I would imagine him and I are probably, I would say we're neck and neck, I would say. Yeah, so
tied for third. Next time you're in Reno, we'll figure it out.
There we go. Put it to the test.
For almost 75 years, Strum, Ruger and Company Incorporated has been a model of corporate and community responsibility. Their motto, Arms Makers for Responsible Citizens, echoes their commitment to these principles as they work hard to deliver quality and innovative firearms. They offer consumers almost 800 variations of more than 40 product lines across both the Ruger and Marlin brands. And since 2021, Ruger has been a strong supporter of Walk the Talk America in full alignment with this mission and philosophy. We invite you to check out Ruger.com and browse their multiple products and help support our mission along the way. Walk the Talk America thanks Ruger for its continued support of this show and our mission.
I think he would like to shoot more, but yeah, with the younger family, maybe he doesn't get to the range as often. DB says he approves this message, saying he likes your order. Safe going with Eddie in first and putting yourself behind DB. Nice. So he's happy with your answer.
Good.
How do you stay mentally healthy as a clinician that has to deal with so many people facing a lot of challenges and tough conversations as your profession?
That's a really good question. I'd say the biggest thing is I have, you got to have a sense of humor in this field. It's, one of those things that, you got to be able to laugh and be able to, kind of turn things off and, laugh when you're, not obviously in an office with a client. I'd say just like, being able to collaborate with different therapists. I talked to, I have a great supervisor. Her name's Adrienne. Really like working with her. The different people I work with, it's good to talk to. I will say the WTTA clinicians have been great. We have a very, very active group chat with me, Jake, Eddie, and DB. So, I mean, sometimes it's, serious stuff. Sometimes it's joking stuff. But, there's been times where, like I've asked questions, Eddie's asked questions, Jake or I feel like Eddie and I both, I don't want to speak for Eddie, but, I know I really look up to DB and Jake and, really kind of view them as mentors. So, just kind of being able to learn from them and pick their brains has been, really, really beneficial. Doing this podcast has been huge. I feel like I've learned so much, and I know I'm kind of getting off the topic of your question, but just want to give all of them some praise there, because I really appreciate, being a part of this team. But so talking to people, essentially talking to other professionals, getting feedback, being open to criticism, just being able to acknowledge, maybe I'm not always doing things right. So I think that's really helpful. When my wife and I come home, so my wife is also a therapist. She's a social worker, LISW, in case anybody's wondering. So we'll kind of bounce some things off each other. We work at different agencies, so we can't really go into too much detail, but, we can kind of give hey, I have this client that had this issue, do you have any recommendations? Or, hey, I talked to, for me, sometimes it'll be kind of going back to my dog, I'll have a client come in and they'll be sobbing and be like, I just had to put my dog down yesterday, or, my cat just got hit by a car or something like that. So, a lot of times, you can get triggered. So, being able to hold it together in session and just be able to talk about it to someone afterwards, I think is really, really powerful. So in the professional world, that's kind of how I, keep my wits about me. Other than that, like I said, I'm a musician. I write my own music. I've been playing for about 20 years. So that's something that really, really keeps me grounded. I mean, I can, grab my bass and, get my pedal board out and, get a loop and just, I can get lost for hours. That's really helpful for me. Going shooting. I think this is going to be, I won't go too far into it, because I think this is going to be one of our future episodes, but we're going to talk about this. But, one thing that we teach in the counseling profession for a coping skill is mindfulness, which is really being present in the moment and really just kind of tuning everything else and just kind of taking some time to give your brain a break. What better way than shooting to do that? You're focusing on, the fundamentals, your hand positioning, your posture, the target, lining the sights up, follow through. I mean, you're very mindful when you're shooting. So that's something that really helps me a lot. And I think that's why I go so much, is just because it just kind of lets me forget about everything I have going on. But yeah, I'd say talking to professionals, picking their brains, shooting, and music. Those are the three things that I do to really kind of keep my wits about me.
Yeah, you're definitely right. I don't know. Maybe the ear protection kind of helps in that mindfulness too, of kind of blocking other stuff out around you and just kind of focusing on what you're doing.
Exactly.
But it is a nice kind of setting to get away and just kind of focus on something that you're enjoying and forgetting about everything else. How as a mental health professional, do you find the balance when someone brings up, oh, my dog, my cat, to where you're not a robot that shows no emotion, but also staying productive and being able to guide them through that?
That's a good question. And I think that answer will differ depending on which therapist you ask. I have learned I'm to kind of give you a little bit of background, I identify as a Christian. I consider myself a Christian. I think everything happens for a reason. And I think that even if you go through something, really, terrible, I feel like, there's some sort of, meaning and purpose that you're supposed to take from it. So kind of like I said, to kind of rewind, so after I got out of school for music, I was working at this sales marketing job for 11 years. And man, did I go through some stress with that job. There was one client we had that literally just drained me emotionally. I had no mental capacity. I worked on that client for about a year. One of those things, I mean, you could have all your goals hit, all your metrics are there, but they would find that one thing and they would just stab you on it until you were like, okay, I'll fix it. So I really learned in that job to just kind of turn work off when I get home. And I think it helps that every job I've had, including that one, including the one I have now, I have, about a 30 to 40 minute drive home. So on that drive, I learned to really just kind of turn things off. And I think that has translated into, working with clients. if something really big comes up, something really heavy comes up, it's a weird thing. It's not something I've always been able to do, but I'm able to just kind of turn it, like, whatever I've got going on needs to go away right now. Like, my traumatic experience aren't going to go anywhere. My past isn't going anywhere. My past is going to stay the same. All of my problems are going to be waiting for me right when I walk out the store at the end of the session. So I'm going to leave it out there and I'm going to focus on the client. And that's what they're paying us for. That's what they're there for. That's what we're there for, to help them through it. So it's kind of taking a stance and just saying, like, I'm here for this person right now. If I need to, seek therapy, if I need to talk to somebody after this hour, I can do that. But right now I'm here for this person. And then another thing I kind of do to tell myself, if I do feel myself getting triggered, because it's not like I just completely turn off my emotions. I don't think anybody can do that. But, as they start to kind of creep up, I'll be able to tell myself, like, okay, like, no matter how intense the session gets, no matter how crazy the stuff they tell me is going to be, no matter what happens, it's an hour, or technically, 53 minutes. So after 53 minutes, the session is going to be done. And that's kind of something that I'll do if I really start to feel it. That's kind of what I do to kind of tell myself, like, okay, like, you're going to be out of this in a little bit. And then my supervisor is really cool. If I need to, like, just kind of go in and say, like, hey, I need to, I know I got a client out there right now. I got to step out for 10 minutes. She's really cool about that. But yeah, that's a really good question. But yeah, so I think just like, my past experience at work and, like, managing stress has kind of taught me to kind of, like, compartmentalize what I need to and just kind of rehash it when I need to.
Yeah, it seems like a very fine line. Obviously, every professional is going to kind of do what works best for them, but you can't be a robot, because that's not going to really build trust or rapport with your client. But then
Exactly.
You can't totally break down and then they're trying to make you feel better. That's not productive.
You do.
So it seems tricky. Have you ever done any sessions in maybe non-traditional locations, like Eddie on the range, or DB? I know we talked about adventure therapy out in the wilderness in his episode that's coming out for listening audiences soon.
Yeah, I have not. I would love to do some sessions at the range. I would do that in a heartbeat. But I think the most that I've done is we're allowed to, like, take our clients on walks if the weather's nice. So the way our agency's set up is we're in like a really big shopping plaza, and we're kind of back in a corner. So what we do, so there's we have like the entire back of the outlet center, and then right above that there's a teeny little hill, and then you're in a residential neighborhood. So a lot of times I'll just take clients on, if the weather's nice, like, we'll take clients on walks, just in, like, do like a walk and talk session. If somebody says like, oh man, like, I woke up late, I didn't go to the gym today, I'll be like, okay, cool, let's go take a walk. We'll go walk around. But I can't say I've, like, done anything, like, super cool and taken anybody shooting or anything like that. But yeah, essentially it's just kind of like, walk and talk therapy is, like, the only extent of that I've done.
Do you find those to be more opening, or are they, in your experience, similar to kind of the sessions in the office?
It depends on the client, really. Sometimes, like, if you're sitting, face to face with someone, they can feel a little bit intimidated. So, like, like the kind of like just that constant eye contact, feeling like they're pressured. Yeah, that can impact people sometimes. So being able to walk where you're not just, like, constantly staring at them in the face, I think that can be benefit. That's shown beneficial for people. They've opened up a little bit more. I'd say that, they've been more productive in the office, just because, like, when you are outside, there's a lot of distractions. Like, you got the cars and birds and squirrels running by and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different distractions that you can come by. But I think it just kind of depends on the person.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was interested as that's kind of like a touch step into nature, but still obviously in the city, compared to the last interview I did with DB, totally in nature and going on maybe more of a hike with a lot more quiet and less distraction. So I was seeing if you saw, the benefits just in that kind of walking outdoors, or it seems like it depends.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that I'm in Ohio. That was interesting. So we don't have the pretty mountains and the pretty trees and the snow tips and the mountains and all that stuff. We just have gray skies and some trees and some houses. So
Yeah, DB's pretty lucky being out in the green country of the Pacific Northwest.
For sure.
I don't think it'd work in New York City or suburbs as much.
Definitely.
Let's see. Let's get to Mike's favorite question. You already did this, but you already talked about how you stay mentally healthy. But after a long, stressful week, what's your go-to? You're going to music, or are you trying to schedule time on the range?
literally both. And last weekend it was a perfect example. Me and my buddy Dan that I was telling you about earlier, we went to the range. We were there for a couple hours. And then there's a new song that I'm working on right now that I came home and kind of picked apart. So I would say those are both like pretty equal. I'd say, I know I talked a little bit about how, just to kind of add to the question, I know you asked me about like how shooting specifically helps. And, I kind of got into the mindfulness side of things and how that really is beneficial for me. How music helps me when I write is, so I'm a bass player. I write some, it's not like, very like something that you see every day, but I do some solo bass repertoire. So everything that I write is instrumental. So essentially what I do is I take whatever emotions I'm feeling, whatever baggage I've had throughout the week, and I'm turning it into, a piece of art. What I think is really powerful about that is that the stuff that I make it's very chill. And I mean, you can find it on Spotify if you're interested. It's just, or on any streaming platform. If you just type my name, I've got 2 albums currently. One's called Reflections, one's called Hope for Tomorrow, and I'm working on a new one right now. But essentially, it's very, very chill music. I've had somebody tell me that's a massage therapist that they use it. They play every once in a while, when they're working on clients. I've had people tell me that, if I've had kids and adults tell me, if it's grad school or just elementary school or middle school, they'll say hey, I really like putting your music on when I'm doing my homework. It really grounds me. And essentially, it's just, and then another friend of mine said, when I listen to, this album in particular, it's very healing for me. And, he kind of thanked me for putting it together. So all that to say, I think there's something really powerful of taking really negative emotions, because I don't write when I'm happy. If I'm in a really good mood, I don't really feel like I need to do any coping skills. It's more so just just kind of doing my normal music and session studio work. But so being able to take something when you're feeling like a really negative emotion, turn it into a piece of art, and then have other people, tell you hey, this really helped me. That's something that I really, really enjoy. And that's why I like music so much. I feel like music is very, very powerful in that regard.
If you're a firearms owner, and especially if you carry concealed, we invite you to enroll in a membership with our partner, the United States Concealed Carry Association, at uscca.com. The USCCA is more than 700,000 Americans from every faith, political stance, and walk of life, spanning multiple demographics. They provide life-saving education and industry-leading training, some of which comes in the form of our firearms and mental health videos that we have recently produced and which will be made available to the membership over the next 12 months. We recommend that you obtain self-defense liability insurance available through Delta Defense and the USCCA, so that if you find yourself in an act of lawful self-defense, you will be prepared for what happens before, during, and after that incident. With the common mission of saving lives, Walk the Talk America is proud to partner with the USCCA and Delta Defense, and we invite you to check out all they have to offer at uscca.com.
Is it something to where, depending on your mood, you're like, I need to be writing this kind of music out versus kind of performing music that you've written? Or is it more of a process of, ooh, this was stressful, I just wrote last week when I had a stressful client, now I'm going to perform that song from last week? Or how do you approach that?
Yeah, so, I'll perform my older music just to kind of keep them under my fingers, and just I don't want to forget how to play them, because they took a lot of time to put together. But usually what I do is if I'm working on something new, I usually don't go into it where it's I had a bad week, I'm going to write a song. I had a bad week, I need some sort of outlet. So I'll come down and I'll just kind of play. I don't really think about the notes I'm playing. I don't think about the chords. I just kind of play what I'm feeling. And sometimes I just do that for 3 hours and I put my bass up and call it a day. Sometimes it'll be like, okay, I really like this thing that I just wrote, so I'll record it on my phone so I don't forget it. And then, I'll come back to it and, kind of develop it from there. So it's kind of a combination of both playing my older stuff just to kind of keep it under my fingers, and then just kind of being experimental and writing new stuff. I think every time I've tried to write a song, like where I say like, and I envy people that are able to do this so well. It's hard for me just to be like, hey, I'm going to write a song right now. I have to really be in the mood. So I think just kind of going in with an open mind and just not really knowing what's going to come of it, that's kind of where the real therapeutic aspect is for me. And then if it turns into a
yeah, it's interesting. We had a lot of guests that talk maybe about a physical output of, I'm going to go work out, I've had a long week, or I know Jake enjoys playing baseball. I'm semi-retired, mostly retired athlete with 2 kids, and I enjoy being athletic as kind of an outlet. So music almost seems the exact same thing, of like an outlet of your emotions in a more positive manner. So it was cool seeing both incorporated, not just playing, but also writing and the whole process to it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I mean, you kind of see it too. Like when you watch people listen to music, I mean, like you could be watching a death metal. You can be really angry and feel like, I need to listen to some death metal. And then they're, like headbanging and they're getting that emotional, that physical release out. It could be like contemporary Christian music where people, have their hands up and are really getting into it. You could be just people, playing, pop music and seeing people dancing. I mean, it's very powerful, and it really is a good emotional outlet in a lot of ways.
Do you listen to music on the range? I know some of the ear protection can sync to Bluetooth or something like that, or do you not mix those two?
That's a really good question. I never even thought about it, but no, I've never done that. Yeah, I've never done that. I think, like when I'm shooting, usually what I'm doing is like, it's a release and it's, therapeutic, but I'm really focusing on, more of like the training aspect. So, I just want to make sure that, like I stay fresh and, like obviously, you don't have a lot of distractions when you're at the range other than just like people, firing off rounds next to you. But essentially, I just really want to, I'm kind of on a mission. I really want to focus on my fundamentals. And usually like even like down to the targets that I use. Usually like I have like those targets with like the really, really small, like 3-inch circles. I really just focus on like precision shooting. So yeah, I'm really hyper focused on just shooting. So yeah, I've never crossed the two before.
Are you going to try it one day now that you thought about it, or are you going to keep them separate?
I think so. Yeah, that'll be cool. I know I've seen a lot of things I don't know if you've seen them, but there's a lot of things on YouTube, and it's probably like they're targeted to me because I love music and guns, but there'll be like they'll be out on the range, they'll be playing like a heavy metal song, but then like they'll start like shooting guns to the beat of the drums. So I've seen that happen. That would be interesting to do sometime.
Yeah, even if you made a song and did you shooting to the beat would be a fun video too.
It would be.
All right, we're hitting an hour. Let's do one last wrap up question that might put you on the spot, and you might have multiple answers instead of the hard way out. What has been your favorite podcast episode that you've been a co-host on?
I would say, get ready to take a drink. Christian Conti. So yeah, I thought that was really good. Kind of like I said earlier, Jake is, somebody that I view kind of as I've grown to view as a mentor. And, like he obviously he loves Christian Conti and talks about him all the time. So being able to, read his book and then see him and you just kind of hear him talk. That podcast, it was like, I felt like it wasn't even a podcast. It was more of like a lesson, if that makes sense. Like I think, me, Jake, Eddie, and DB, like we didn't really talk too much in that episode. I think, I can remember maybe asking one question And it was literally just like I was sitting here and just soaking in information, and I almost kind of like forgot that I was sitting on a podcast, like hosting a podcast. But I think that one was, I'd say that was probably my favorite. I definitely learned a lot from him. I could see why Jake likes him so much. After reading his book, there's a lot of stuff that I stole from him that I, incorporated into my sessions. So, yeah, I'd say probably him.
That's probably a safe answer. There's not too many people that are maybe truly an expert or master in their field, but he's done something unique and created yield theory and can back kind of the talk up with answering quickly of when Mike was sharing that, and he's like, oh, maybe relook at this chapter and practice this, and that might help you. And you could just see just a wealth of information and a very elite mindset. So yeah, I can't blame you for that. That's definitely on the top of my list as well.
Nice.
But yeah, thanks for joining and getting this. I have a wrap up. Did you have something? Go for it.
Yeah, it was okay. I know it's my interview technically, but I want to ask you. So I know you've sat on a lot more interviews than I have. So I'm same question for you. What would you say your favorite was?
Yeah, I think Christian Conti. Just to hear everybody interact with him, and like you said, he carried the conversation. He didn't really need any host on it at all, but it was just had everybody on their edge of their seat from the start to the end. And maybe that has to do with Jake and his kind of comfort level and knowledge of him and just getting right into it. As some people, you have to kind of work the chemistry out, and then you're like, oh, that last 5 or 10 or 20 minutes was amazing, but it took us a little bit to get there. But that one was great from the start. Everybody had kind of good questions, and yeah, if you're listening, check that one out, as I think everybody agrees that's one of the best episodes we've done in a while.
Awesome.
But yeah, thanks for coming on. I know we've wanted to do this, and I think I was sick one time when we were supposed to do this, or something got in the way, but I'm glad we got this done.
Yeah, definitely.
Let people know where they can find you. You mentioned your Spotify, but wrap it all together. Any social media handles to reach out to you if they want to ask any questions or listen to your music.
Yeah. For the music, any streaming platform, just type in my first and last name, Brandon Covey. It'll come up. There's an album called Reflections and one called Hope for Tomorrow. Hopefully there'll be some more singles or albums coming out there soon. I'm just kind of now getting back into it. I took a pause from grad school and changing careers and everything, but it's something that I feel important to get back into. As far as social media, I've got a Facebook, again, just Brandon Covey, and then Instagram, BRCovey1. So very easy to get a hold of. Feel free to send me a message if you have any questions or recommendation or need any recommendations or anything like that. I'd be happy to talk to you. I will say too, I want to give a shout out to Eddie. His Instagram handle is like so cool, and like his Instagram handle is Black Powder Therapist, which is just so cool. And then I have to say, like, I'm his BRCovey1. So kudos to Eddie for having a cool Instagram handle.
I don't know if Jake's gonna change it, but he has a creative one idea that he might go to. So we'll see if that comes to reality.
I was thinking.
Thanks for joining us, and
I was thinking about changing mine to shoot.
What? There you go. Get your own thing. We'll get you some your own T-shirt and sweatshirt. You'll be set.
Heck yeah.
All right. Thanks for joining. Thanks for listening. And thanks to all the sponsors you've heard throughout this conversation that make these possible. And I'll steal Jake's line. We wish you all great mental wellness. Bye.